Hi everybody, welcome to the Vegan Brit. This video is going to be very different from my others. I'm just going to have a chat with you. It's been about a month since I last posted a video, and as you will already know from the title of this video, I've not been very well. I had COVID and I'm just getting better and getting back to a point where I feel like I have the energy and the health to start making videos again, because I've really missed making and editing my cooking videos and posting for you all. I'm so sorry I couldn't see through to the end of Veganuary. I hope that if you did do Veganuary that it went well for you, and if you are continuing your vegan journey, that's brilliant. If you gave Veganuary a go, regardless of what you're up to now, well done. To go a month without all of these different foods that you're used to having is a challenge. And update on my mum, she is not vegan, but she's essentially plant-based. She's still continuing with her Veganuary, vegan February. I can't make it sound like a cool word for being vegan in February, but anyway. So I've been in two minds whether or not to share what happened to me and my experience of COVID, because honestly there are so many strains of COVID out there right now that there's just no point comparing your experiences to somebody else's. Everybody's experiences are completely different, but I figured if you're curious and you want to know, continue watching, and if it's something that you don't think that you'd like to hear, I'll see you in another video next week. So I was working in London, working Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The train ticket pretty much cost the same as a hotel for the night, so I decided to stay in a hotel because it was more convenient and I would be travelling up and down less. I thought it would be safer, but rather than going for one of the chain hotels like Travelodge or Premier Inn, I went for this £5 cheaper hotel, and it was a massive mistake. The first night I was in a room and the walls were peeling. The smoke detector had been sellotaped over. Obviously the people who had stayed in the room before me had taped it over so that they could smoke in the room, and the room smelled like smoke. The staff there didn't wear masks, and if they did, they were like hanging down over their noses. I asked to move to a different room for the second night because I was in the basement and I could hear people like trampling up and down above me. When they showed me the room and I was like looking in the bathroom and like asking them questions about, oh, can you clean this, can you clean this, the guy just kind of came right into my space, wasn't giving me distance. I'm not sure how hygienic that hotel was. Anyway, so the next week I went back to London and I did the same thing. I worked for 3 days, stayed in a hotel for 2 nights, but instead I stayed in a Premier Inn, which was so much better. But that morning I was waiting for my train into London, and for some reason all the trains were cancelled and I had no way of getting to work. So at like 7 o'clock in the morning I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I have no way of getting to work, can you please drive me to Hammersmith from Hampshire? And thank goodness my dad got out of bed, got into the car and drove me to work. And I mention that because I was in the car with my dad that whole journey. Neither of us were wearing masks, of course, we live in the same house. So that day I was really tired, but I'd been up since 5 o'clock in the morning. I thought that's why I'm tired, because I've just gotten up early. But I had this kind of feeling of needing to be warm, needing to be cozy, just something wasn't quite right. But I thought I'm probably just tired. I get like that when I'm run down. And over the next couple of days while I was at work, I started coughing, only a little bit, and very occasionally, like not even once an hour, I had a little bit of a cough and I was feeling a little bit warm. So on the Friday when I was traveling back home, I messaged a friend of mine who'd recently gotten over COVID and said, like, I feel fine, I just feel a little bit tired and I feel quite tickly in my chest. And they said, well, be careful, because that's exactly the symptoms that I had when I got COVID, go and get tested. Got back home on the Friday, and because I wasn't sure, I said to my mum and dad, I'm not going to hug you, I'm not going to come near you, I've got a cough, I'm going to go to the test centre tomorrow morning and get a test, but in the meantime I should stay away from you guys. Saturday morning, went to the test centre, did the little swab thing, and spent the day sleeping in my parents' room. So I don't normally live here, I've just been living here because of COVID, because I lost my job. I've been living with my family, and my bed is actually in my dad's office, so he's in his office during the day and I just come into the room at night to sleep. But because my dad needed to do work, I slept in my parents' bedroom. It was so amazing how quickly I got the results. It was that evening, maybe 7-8 o'clock that evening, and my heart absolutely sank when I got the email that said that I tested positive. And I just called my parents, who were in the other room, and I told them, and they were just completely shocked. I felt really guilty and really responsible for bringing COVID into my family, said that I'm going to continue to isolate from you guys, despite the fact that my dad called up a helpline and they said there's no point me isolating from them. They've probably got it too if we live in the same house. But because I had those few days in London where I wasn't around them, I thought there's maybe a slim chance that I've not passed it on to them. And also the fact that I was in the car with my dad for an hour, that really worried me, because I thought, like, I was scared that I'd passed it on to my dad, and he's high risk. So I just wanted to take all precautions necessary and decided to isolate. And after getting my positive test, I think we were all taking it like a lot more seriously, and my dad moved all of his computers into the living room, and he stayed in the living room and I stayed in the room that I'm talking to you from now, my dad's office. And the plan was for me to isolate for 10 days from the day that I first developed symptoms. So Wednesday was my day 0 where I started feeling really tired and unwell, and when I actually went into isolation, it was my 4th day after developing symptoms. So we developed a little system where I would just message my mom, let her know what I wanted to eat. She would make up my food, put it on a little tray, leave it outside the door. Honestly, the food that my mom made for me kept my spirits up. She would always present it so nicely, and sometimes she would give me like a little ramekin of tahini to put on top because I like to do that. Or she would make the salad in a really pretty way, or add a little ramekin of fruit, or just like little extra loving touches. It was really adorable. And the only communal area that we shared was the bathroom, and every time I went to the bathroom I put my mask on. There were wipes, there was Dettol spray in the bathroom, so we would all be like wiping everything down. When we came out of the bathroom, I reduced how many showers I had, and I would always shower after my parents had used the bathroom so that they didn't have all the steam and my breath in the bathroom. I also didn't have a bath, which I really needed a bath then. More than anything, I just wanted to relax in the bath, but I didn't feel like it was safe for me to be in the bathroom for longer than I needed to be. And in the evening I would video call my parents and say goodnight, and sometimes during the day they would call me. Every morning my younger sister would send me photos of my nephew and check in with me. I had a couple of friends who checked in with me. So as the days went on, my symptoms developed, and my cough didn't necessarily get worse, but my chest felt a lot more tickly and a lot tighter. I couldn't take a deep breath without feeling like if I breathed anymore I would start coughing, and I didn't want to start a coughing fit, so I kind of contained my breath, as it were, which was really horrible, like not to be able to take a really deep lovely breath. And the other main symptom I had was nausea. Like, the nausea was the worst. I constantly felt like I'd just stepped off a roller coaster. I think it was on the Monday or the Tuesday I kept having these lightheaded spells where the nausea would intensify and I would feel like I was going to faint. I felt very disconnected from my surroundings. I kept getting confused, kept forgetting things. So I was getting quite concerned because I was in the room on my own and I was scared that I was just going to faint and nobody would know. So I called up my GP to try and get some advice. They told me to call 111, which if you're not in the UK, 111 is the non-emergency line for medical care. And the doctor called me back and he was really lovely. He wanted to eliminate the possibility that I maybe had an ear infection or something. It was quite scary because he suggested that I go to the hospital to get checked out because I was isolating and because I don't drive and I couldn't get my parents to drive me. The doctor said that they were going to send an ambulance to take me to hospital to check up on me because the confusion and the dizzy spells and nearly fainting. I read up on this after, but it's something to do with the brain swelling, and that's when it can get pretty dangerous. So because he was concerned, initially he said they were going to send an ambulance to take me to hospital, but paramedics came over instead and checked up on me, took my blood pressure and everything, and told me to like walk up and down the room and made sure that everything was fine with me. I checked on my parents as well just to make sure that they were okay. They still weren't exhibiting symptoms and they'd both gotten tests, and the paramedic was so nice. He offered to post my parents' tests for them so that they didn't have to leave the house. He also said to them, there's no point in you isolating from her because if she's got it, you probably got it, but maybe you probably don't. He was a bit of a funny guy. He talked a lot. Actually, it was really weird. A couple of days before, my sister had a spasm in her back and was lay out on the floor screaming her head off, and we had to call the paramedics for her, and it was the exact same paramedic. So the same paramedic came back to our flat a couple of days later, and this time to check on me. But he talked a lot, really kind, really sweet, but some of the things you don't really want to hear when you're ill with an illness that is quite a mystery and that nobody knows how it develops. He was saying things like, you're probably not going to get worse, but you might get worse. That was the biggest thing psychologically. Apart from the nausea, the second biggest challenge with having COVID was more mental. It was quite lonely. I didn't know if I had the energy to call somebody up, or when I did start talking to someone, just talking to them like a video chat or a phone call, having to think about what to say exhausted me or made me feel more sick. But also I was terrified about my parents, and I was scared that they would get COVID and that it would affect them differently to how it was affecting me. Like, my dad has asthma and diabetes, and I would hear him cough or I'd hear them sneeze. There were times where I would just hold my breath and listen and try and figure out what was going on, and this was the most terrifying time. But they sent off their tests and they tested negative. I was so relieved when they got their negative results that it was almost like, now I can relax and I can get better myself. I don't have to worry about anyone else, because that was honestly a huge worry that ordinarily would have been difficult to think about. But when I'm ill as well and had nothing to do but sit in my room, it was really unpleasant. So it was a relief that they had their negative test back. I was very, very lucky that I didn't get COVID as bad as some people have got. I didn't lose my taste and my smell. I didn't have a fever. I barely had a cough until the tail end of when I was ill. Completely took myself off social media because I think people try to help. They say things to try and help and advise you, but don't realize actually that it can have the opposite effect. Like, I had some people saying to me that I would get worse on day 6 or something like that, or that days 8 to 12 are the worst, and I was only on day 6 at the time. And I was like, do you know what, I can't control what other people are saying, I'm just gonna go off social media, which was a shame because that's where I was getting a lot of my support from, a lot of my friends online, but I just couldn't take the risk to my anxiety and stay on there. So I just turned off all my notifications. I started doing little schedules every day. My younger sister bought me a cross stitch, and I've got some things to show you guys. These are delicious. She bought me these amazing little chocolate truffles. And then my older sister Bernadette, she ordered me like a whole box of No More Caramels because I absolutely love these. I'm very, very slowly going through them. I'm trying not to have so much sugar because I did eat a lot once I got better. But little things like that really kept my spirits up. The NHS were brilliant. Throughout the whole time that I was isolating, I got a phone call and I spoke to a really sweet woman called Imogen. I still remember her name. She was so sweet and so kind. Asked me how I was, gave me some advice, said to kind of keep myself busy, that I can do a little bit of movement in my room if I feel up to it, that it's good to move about. That's when I wrote myself a schedule, and I would get up in the morning, I would do some writing, I would do some yoga, did a bit of reading. But I basically broke up my day so that I was doing things because I was going absolutely crazy, just like staying in my room on my own. I wanted a hug and a chat. And it was weird. On the 10th day, I got a phone call to ask me how I was, and I said, I'm actually still feeling nauseous after I eat. And actually on the 9th and 10th days of my illness, I wasn't eating because everything I ate, I felt like I was going to be sick. And I looked up online and it said, if you're still feeling sick or being sick, you're still contagious. And that was one of the most frustrating things, that the 10th day you get a phone call from the NHS, they check up on you, and if you're still ill, you don't get any guidance after that. So even though my isolation ended on my 10th day, which was the Sunday, I actually didn't come out of isolation until Wednesday. So that was 2 weeks after I first developed symptoms, because I was scared of going out, seeing my family, and still being contagious and still making them sick, and having to make the decision when to come out of isolation was really, really difficult. But I asked a couple of friends who were nurses and doctors, and they said, you've done your 10 days, actually you've done 14 days, you don't have any symptoms, you don't have a fever, the nausea will last for a while, you should be fine. So it was Wednesday the 3rd of February, and I know that because the next day was my other sister Jessica's birthday, and I really wanted to get better to be out of isolation for her birthday. I'd done so many checks, I'd asked lots of people. I'd only had nausea for about 3 or 4 days and a cough, which is okay, doesn't mean you're contagious. And I decided Wednesday afternoon, after doing as much research as possible, I can either stay in my room terrified all the time, or I can trust that I'm better and I can go out and see my family. So I went out of my room, and my mum and dad were shocked to see me come into the living room, and I said, I'm gonna come out of isolation. I feel like I've done all I can do, and to the best of my knowledge, I'm safe to come out of isolation. So I finally got my hugs from them, and then I went next door to my sister's flat, and I just walked into Jessica's bedroom. Jessica was on a computer and Bernadette was sitting on the bed. So Bernadette saw me walk into the room and Jessica was like around the corner in her room. And Bernadette just like gasped and just was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she saw me and like she screamed. And I was like, guys, I'm coming out of isolation now. And they just gave me the biggest hugs, and everyone was crying, and it was a lot of relief, a lot of happiness, a lot of worry set aside, because my whole family were worrying about me constantly all the time. But a couple of days before I actually officially came out of isolation, I felt that I don't feel like I can get better unless I actually go outside and get some fresh air and do some exercise. So before I came out of isolation and rejoined my family in the house, I wrapped up, put on my mask, and went out just for a tiny little walk. And it was really sweet. My whole family, they were so concerned about me. Like, they didn't want me to go out on my own. They didn't want me to overdo it and walk too far. So I'll always remember this. Like, my dad came out with me for my first walk, and he walked ahead of me, and I was behind him, just like really wobbly, really weak, very slowly walking after him. And I wanted to go to the park, but they were like, the park's too far for you, Kat. Just walk around the block, don't overdo it. It was just lovely to go out, but it was also really lovely to have my family supporting me and taking care of me. And I went for another walk later that day, and I started going for 2 walks a day. And also, because I live in a block of flats, I didn't want to get into the lift still not knowing if I was contagious, so I walked up and down 14 flights of stairs through the back staircase to keep the rest of the block safe. So I was doing these flights of stairs and going for a walk and like slowly building up my energy, and I was able to celebrate Jessica's birthday with her, which was so nice. And I was doing acting classes as well while I was ill, and that really lifted my spirits too. Since then, I'm feeling much better, but I'm not completely 100%. And I think if you know people who have had COVID, don't expect them to be better just because they're out of quarantine or out of isolation. It's a very unpredictable illness. Just because you're over it doesn't mean it's over. For me, it's definitely the nausea. I can feel fine one day, and then a couple of nights ago I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt quite dizzy and like I was going to be sick. Sometimes when I'm in the shops or when I'm out, I feel ill. I still get nausea quite frequently after I eat. I still feel a bit of nausea, but apart from that, everything else is fine. So now I'm just so grateful for my health, for my family, the people who checked in on me every single day, the people who have checked on me since. So there you go, that was my experience of COVID. Like I said, no 2 experiences will be the same. If you're watching this and you have COVID, my biggest piece of advice to you is get off social media and don't listen to what anybody else says. Don't Google your symptoms. Don't make yourself worry anymore. You can always call 111 or 999 if your symptoms start to cause you concern. That's what those numbers are there for. Don't try and be a hero. This is a very unknown illness. Look after yourself. Be safe. So thank you everybody for watching. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But I'm absolutely on the mend. I'm 1,000 times better than I was, and I can't wait to get another video out for you guys. Thank you for your patience this last month where I've not been posting videos, but I'm back and it's good to be back. I'll see you all next week. Bye. Give that like button a hit and subscribe to the Vegan Brit.